Hello everyone and welcome to Balance for Ill. Today I want to talk about the Dietrich OT-01, the OT-01 standing for Organic Time. It's a very interesting watch and has often been sort of referred to as a bit of a wildcard watch. And what does that mean in practice? Well, it's different. It's not really like anything else that exists out there. It's kind of very unique in terms of its styling. It's not something that you kind of see every day, so it's kind of something that people are slightly drawn to when they see it because they're not used to seeing watches like this. It's something that I picked up last year after I was sort of looking at buying one for a long time, and then eventually I spotted a deal from a AD in Switzerland. I was able to have one shipped over, which was kind of just at the beginning of the lockdown here around in England, and it was something that was sort of good to sort of keep the spirits up during a very difficult time, especially in this sort of time where we can't really go outside. What's interesting is this watch often feels a bit like bringing a bit of the outside inside, and I'll explain what I mean by that in a bit more detail shortly. So to first go over the case dimensions, the thickness is 14.5 millimeter and the dimensions are 46 millimeter by 47 millimeter across. And so it's not a small watch, but nor is it a particularly oversized watch, and I'll explain what I mean by that later in the video. But it's something that I can wear and not really feel like I'm wearing a ginormous watch on my wrist. It actually wears really nicely. I'll do a wrist shot shortly. The movement inside is a Miyota 82S7, a bit of a workhorse of a movement, but also quite a simple movement, but the way it's been used is actually in a very sort of tactile way. In terms of the case finishing, it's a steel case, but it's got mixed finishing. I actually really like the way you have the black contrasting with the matte silver. I think that works really neat, the way it goes the whole way across. It's signed in a couple of places on the case. So you have OT-01 standing for Organic Time 1. This is one of the first. And then on the other side, the crown is signed 69. What's interesting about that is, if I'm not mistaken, I think that's the year of birth of the founder, Emmanuel Dietrich. They subsequently changed the signing of the crown in later models, which switched to a D for Dietrich. So a lot of the earlier models had the 69 crown. The strap system is very interesting indeed. I'll just show you how this works. So it just pulls straight through. This is one of a range of straps that they do. They sort of offer different styles. There's leather versions, there's this sort of fabric version. Now when you first buy the watch, you'll discover that the strap feels very sort of stiff, and when after a couple of wears, it wears in almost like a pair of your favorite jeans. It sort of just wears in and sort of tailors and sort of forms to your wrist over a couple of wears, which is really nice. It's a simple fabric strap. The buckle is signed, hopefully you can pick that up on camera, just signed Dietrich, along with the underside of the strap, which is again just signed Dietrich. The case back is also signed Dietrich Organic Time. It's kind of simple case back, but it does exactly what it's designed to do. And what's nice is you have this sort of really interesting design that's sort of these svelte edges, which really helps when you're wearing the watch because it sort of forms to the wrist, and what might have been a sort of slightly tall looking watch on wrist just really isn't with the way that this is executed. So to put the strap back on, it's really quite simple. It just threads through, kind of in the same way a NATO strap would work. It just makes switching these straps very simple and very easy indeed, and that's done. Now turning to the dial and crystal itself, it's a sapphire crystal, and on each corner you have these sort of black screws. But one of the really fascinating things about the watch is the sort of layers to it. So you'll notice that the crystal is somewhat domed, which sort of distorts the light ever so slightly, which makes for sort of very interesting viewing when you're sort of glancing at the watch at an angle. But you have a sapphire crystal that has these minute indices the whole way around, and these are layered, so the indices kind of go in stages between the watch case and the dial itself. The hands are very unique in that they're these leaf-looking hands which are loomed, which is nicely executed, but also harkens to the organic time aspect. And then the second hand, as you may have realized, is that cool looking star on the bottom right around 5 o'clock. Now I'll just move the hands out of the way so you can see that in a bit more detail. It's a really cool way of expressing the seconds. We have a lot of watches with a sweeping seconds hand. To have something that's a little bit different is nice to see. The watch also has a 24-hour indicator, so just around sort of 10 o'clock there, hopefully you can pick that up on camera, there's sort of a small leaf underneath, which is also loomed, and then the 24-hour counter, which is kind of sitting on what sort of looks like a snowflake, a black snowflake. Again, it sort of connects with the organic side of the internals of the watch. Everything, it's one of those watches that you can wear that just feels like there's a little world inside the watch. So the layering in this watch is really quite cool. You have obviously the small seconds counter and the 24-hour counter, but if you look deeper, you have all of these other layers, and going through the watch, which is a bit of a polarizing part, some people like it, some people don't, is this almost sort of bracket system. Always sort of reminds me of kind of bark of trees, it's almost like a sort of pieces of bark from a tree. Again, it connects with the organic side, but it's just such an interesting dial to look at, so unique. So unlike anything else out there and just so different. I've loved owning this watch, and it's one that I actually turn to really quite regularly. I mean, obviously it's not going to be the most accurate watch in the world, but I don't really care. It's more of a sort of piece of art on the wrist, and you can throw it on in the morning and more or less at a quick glance what the time is. You don't need to, in these times of lockdown, you don't need an uber accurate watch. Who cares? It's far better to have something that's interesting to look at, that gives you just a rough idea of time. I hope you enjoyed the video. That's all for this week, and I'll see you on the next one.